Hi, y'all. This is the Divine Journey of Self podcast, where we talk about and experience the Akashic Records, meditation, reality transurfing, channeling, and all things woo-woo and some good juju. My name is Rebecca, and I'm here to help demystify the mystical, and I intend to show you how truly divine your journey thus far actually is. Hang out with me for a little while and see if we can't help bring clarity and simplicity to your spiritual life. Wow, guys, here we are. It is our first episode on the podcast. I cannot believe it. I finally got over myself and have decided to show up on the quantum level here with you right now, where we get to do this thing together. Now, let me just preface and say that absolutely nothing that I talk about from here on in, the entire life of this podcast, none of these things have I completely figured out. If at any point it feels like I'm coming from a place of preaching or that I somehow have, a secret key that somebody else doesn't have, let me just come right out and say it right now. I don't have this figured out, and nobody does. And anybody who tries to appeal to our ego in that sense is really just lying. Nobody has it figured out. We're all just failing forward towards the same goal of ascension, enlightenment. And it's a process. It is not a destination. It is a journey. There are many teachings that would speak of perfection, and that, we have this goal for, to become these perfect golden age beings. And on a certain level, I do believe that is available to us. But at the same time, I know how damaging and how painful it truly is to believe that perfection is something that we can get to on a day-to-day basis. And oftentimes the issue, at least for me, is the picture in my mind that somehow if I do X, Y, and Z, then Q is going to be the end result of perfection. If I wake up at the right time in the morning and I do the right meditation and I do the right yoga and I drink the right drinks and I eat the right food and all of those things, then I will be just in this perfect state of bliss and everything will flow amazingly and I never have to worry. That is a complete illusion. So let me just speak on that right now here, that's garbage. And that is not something that I want to validate. There is no state of perfection in that level. I do believe that, there are, the rainbow light body and different states where ascended masters, or not ascended masters, but masters who have thus then ascended, have quite possibly shown us the way to get to that ultimate state of bliss. But that's not where we live in our day-to-day lives. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second. And so today, on the very first episode, we're going to talk about shadow work. As this podcast grows and morphs and becomes something really fantastic, I am so excited to talk about many myriad of topics and, tools and guests and all kinds of different cool stuff. But really, my goal is to be able to help you to understand that whatever you're going through, whatever you find yourself in right now, that is divine, that every single thing from the car accident to death to tragedy to abundance to all of these things, every single part of it is divine. And working with ourselves, working with our shadow is one of those ways where we embrace more of the divine and lead ourselves away from this egoic idea that somehow we can control everything and that will somehow give us the end result that we're looking for. Because ultimately, we are not the puppet master as much as we want to be. We're just not. And that's okay. That's a good thing. So today we're going to talk about shadow work, and we're going to talk about what is the shadow, why be concerned about the shadow, what is shadow work, shadow awareness, as I like to call it, what isn't shadow work, how do I personally implement shadow work without getting overwhelmed or depressed? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal story of getting courageously honest with myself. So let's get into it. Let's chat away, y'all. What is the shadow? So Freud called it the id. Others have called it the disowned self, parts of ourselves that we think, feel, speak, or do that we choose to ignore or pretend don't exist. Carl Jung labeled it as either an unconscious aspect of the personality that the conscious ego does not identify as a part in itself, or the entirety of the unconscious. I, along with others, believe that we have duality within our shadow, that we have positive things that we don't want to acknowledge and can sometimes indulge in hero worship when we're not tapping into our own latent abilities for good. And then we have some negative things that we do and we don't want to acknowledge, we don't want to see, because that would kind of mess with our perception of ourselves. So why are we even concerned about our shadow? Why do we care about this? Why do we want to talk about something that we don't even want to recognize? And for me, it's because I want to grow. I want to evolve. I want to become a more whole and balanced person. I don't want to live in this aggrandized view of myself, like I said before, that I've got it figured out, because I don't. But I'm working on myself, and that's the point. But shadow work is also, it's a catalyst. It's not the point, but it's what helps us get to the point, right? So it helps us to move from the caterpillar to the butterfly. It is this kind of amazing transformational metamorphosis process. It's this beautiful way to be able to see ourselves from an objective perspective. So what is shadow work, or shadow integration, assimilation, awareness? As an Akashic Records reader, I really love to be able to go into the Akashic Records and get a higher perspective, because ultimately that's what the Akashic Records can do for us, is it can give us a totally new and transformational perspective that we may not have had the ability to see from our finite view in the first place. And so oftentimes when I'm in the Akashic Records, it's very conversational for me. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this conversation that I had in the Akashic Records. So they begin and they say, shadow work is not as difficult as it would seem. You see, you all play these games, these shadow puppet games with each other. Do you not? And I respond, yes, we do. It seems like regardless of how hard I try, at some point or some juncture, I'm caught in this quote unquote play of life. Authenticity even begins to feel fake because money is involved. And then they ask me, why do you feel fake? And I respond, because the answer given is simply to get a click or a buy or something like that. And then they respond to me, shadow work is admitting the places where your words, actions, or deeds have been structured to manipulate the result. Shadow work is allowing yourself to be seen from all angles, not simply in the ways that you have blocked out the light for others or hurt others. Although this is a key point, it's true. It's, yes, I can be seen for exactly who I am and what I think without flinching against the perceived consequences. It's like this. I took this one thing because I believed that the universe would not provide. It's admitting the spaces and places where you have tried to play God to someone else to manipulate the outcome, to get what you want without having to put the work in. And when you begin to see that you can stand in the light and allow yourself to be seen for who you truly are, a divine emanation of a holy holograph, there is no longer any need for shadow. Tricks, do this and you'll get your dreams. Only subterfuge the outcome. You can't fully enjoy it in the end. Your shadow begins to block out the light for others because you are not showing up for your life in honesty and reverence for the holiness that you are. You are the divine right of God. This life within you is the divine right of God. Consciousness squeezed down into a tiny micron of existence, containing the whole universe in a single speck. It would be as if one walked around you with a candle, and you did not attempt to hide any piece of yourself. This is for those that seek it out, not to be given away at every gaze and glance that comes your way. Do you see? Do you understand? And so I respond, sort of. So if a person comes to me and asks a question, I can speak the truth of the matter without trying to skew the outcome. No meandering story to elicit sympathy or understanding, simply the truth. And they respond, yes, but so much more. It's being available to your own truth without flinching from the outcome. It's, I lash out at others because I feel like they will take my abuse and not leave me. I have this dirty pleasure because I don't know how to ask my partner for what I really desire and need. I only ride a bike because I'm afraid I'm not enough to handle buying a car in Sweden. I think that I have to utilize my looks, status, or title in order to get the respect I need for people to trust me. It's bringing awareness to the places we try to hide from others and ourselves. And that's where the conversation concluded. And oh my goodness, I think I've read through this probably 10 different times, and I've gotten new perspective on myself in so many ways. And I love that first thing that they spoke about of shadow puppets. And, if you've ever done the shadow puppets, and you can do it where you've got a light source and then your hands and then it projects on the wall, or you can do it so that there is a light source and it projects onto a screen and then somebody else is sitting on the other side of the screen. And that's really the picture that I got, when I was in the records, was, this screen where we contain the light within us, and then we try to manipulate the light within us to project something much bigger or smaller or, scary or delightful or what have you onto this screen of our lives for others to see. And there is some need for that, in a sense. But it's when we are doing this to manipulate the outcome that we really have to look at ourselves and live from our truth, whatever that may be, and allow people to have their reactions, not try to, say the cool thing or portray ourselves in a particular way in order to get that desired outcome. And man, I am so guilty of this. And I had no idea how much I try to play the victim, or, the rescuer, or, the teacher, or what have you, any of my really big archetypes that I have in my own personality, instead of living from the truth that I am the divine in this finite existence. And that is just absolutely mind-blowing. I don't have to make excuses for myself, but I also need to hold myself to a different level of accountability in my day-to-day, in my conversations, in my literally every single choice I make must be made from my divinity. And that, that can be really difficult. That can be really overwhelming and hard. So I myself, I gathered that it's a sense of dropping fear and allowing the universe to provide and unfold without the attempts to manipulate. And that's just, it's so beautiful and it's so amazing. It's like this blossoming of a flower, blossoming of a rose. The rose, I have some roses in my front yard that here it is, the end of October, we get down to 30 degrees or below Fahrenheit all the time, constantly. And these roses are still just blooming like crazy. And that's really what we should be doing also, is that just continuing to bloom despite the circumstances and not allowing our fear to become the lens that we see our entire lives through. And that, man, that is just some massive soul work that I need to work on. But I wanted to go into the records a second time. I think I even went in a third time. Let me look here. Yes, I did go into it a third time because I wanted to talk about positive shadow work, excavating our inner gold, the positive aspects of ourselves that we do not want to acknowledge. And maybe not that we don't want to, but we simply don't see. We're not able to see because our perspective of ourselves can be so negative that we're not able to see the good things that we do. So this is the conversation that I had in the records about positive shadow work. And they begin, haha. Now you want to know about the positive aspects of yourself that you do not want to acknowledge. And I respond, yes. How do we bring out the good parts of ourselves that we don't acknowledge? And they respond, look at yourself. It's all about awareness. Not being egoically proud or puffed up, as you like to say, but enjoying the fruits of your labor. You all have these divine qualities of giving and loving and allowing others to flourish, shine, and blossom. These things can flow through you, and you can find a sense of peace and gratitude towards yourself for the kindness, compassion, and love that giving out without expecting a particular outcome brings you. It's you give love because you hope in return that someone will give love back to you. Then you're doing that same thing again, attempting to manipulate the outcome. Give to give, not to receive. And yes, you may have tenacity and determination to accomplish a particular task, but if it had the spirit behind it to get a particular result from those around you, quote unquote, applause and accolades, then what good is it? It's simply more manipulation. Do you see? And I respond, yes, I think so. Even the good things that we do can have ulterior motives, and it's the ulterior motives that trip us up, that make us think that we are good when in fact we're just being manipulative in a quote unquote positive sense. And they respond, yes, now you are getting it. And somehow, and they finish there, somehow this is just, it's so incredible to me because it's really, it pares it all down so simply to look at our motives, to look at why am I doing this? Am I cleaning my house because I feel like good moms clean their house and I believe on some level that I'm not a good mom? Then maybe I need to embrace that I'm a good mom already, and that cleaning my house or not cleaning my house is not going to change that. And I don't have to live from a certain compulsion in order to do that. And so it's so simple, but so layered and so magical at the same time. It's freeing, and yet it's hard. It's hard because I know for myself, I can end up tying myself in knots of, well, but why am I doing this? And if I'm caught up in the why instead of the I am the divine emanation of a holy holograph, then I've missed the point again, that I should be living from divinity, from spirit, and not from a place of striving and grasping and trying to figure it all out, but living from that sense of peace, that sense of flow, that unconditional love. And even though it's not easy, we can do it. It's not impossible. We can do it. So I wanted to go on and go into the records a third time about what isn't shadow work, because there seems to be a lot of, different perspectives, and this just happens to be my personal perspective. I don't want to dog anybody for, what their choices are and what brings them joy and, all that good stuff. But I also don't want to give presence to something that doesn't actually bring about true change. And so I wanted to go into the Akashic Records a final time about what shadow work isn't. And so they say, fake shadow work. Yes, yes, yes. Fake shadow work is fluffy and light. It does not look at the underpinnings of what you know, think, and feel every single day. Fake shadow work says it's a one-time gig, and then you get to say you've integrated your shadow and you're good. Really, that is just your shadow talking, wanting to run away and hide from the light. Shadow doesn't want to be seen, doesn't want to integrate. That is why you must do this with care and compassion. No forcing here. Shadow work is a tricky gig and not for the faint-hearted. You have a major cojones in order to dig into why you do the thing that you do, why you are cutting yourself off from your majestic self. It's not yelling or screaming or pushing boundaries, although these things have their place and time for benefit. But knowing your shadow is not growling. It's simply awareness. You do not wish to master the dark. Simply be aware of it and let it run for the hills. All it needs is a simple amount of awareness. No tricks or fights. Just aware. It's, yes, I do that one thing, but me and the universe, my highest self, have the ability to bring it to the light and let it fade into the light. You are the light, after all. And once again, this just was massively refreshing because from my humanness, I want to overcomplicate things so much and turn things into just like this massive, like overthinking, over planning, overdoing kind of situation. And yes, there is a time for thinking, there's a time for planning, and there's a time for doing. As long as that's coming from a place of being, of understanding our divinity, of understanding how beautiful our hearts truly are. That our hearts are not these broken, messy things, but these amazingly resilient, strong, beautiful pieces of us that have the ability to do so much, to love so deeply. And we oftentimes just don't recognize it as that, as love. And so I wanted to talk about how I implement shadow work without getting overwhelmed or depressed, because it is so easy, especially when I realize things about myself that I do that I'm not exactly proud of, where I kind of want to go grab a big, container of ice cream and a pack of cookies and, a case of wine and drown my sorrows. But, that's really not going to get me anywhere. That is not pushing me towards the goals. And so how do I implement shadow work without getting overwhelmed or depressed? So I had this huge epiphany that I do something that honestly I was completely unaware of, and it needed to be brought into the light of my awareness. And one of the things that I find is really, really good for me is I get out on my bicycle and I ride. And oftentimes in these spaces, and maybe for others, it's driving, it's vacuuming, it's washing dishes, it's something that is somewhat repetitive and can become meditative at the same time. And I often at those times am able to get, a different perspective. And I'm sure, some awesome neuroscience dudes would say that I'd entered into theta or alpha or, whatever the special ones are to be able to receive more downloads. But I was riding my bike and it just kind of hit me that I do this thing with the people that I love and that care about me. And I end up coming to them with a problem. I end up complaining. I feign helplessness. And then my friends try and help. And, they want to give me, a different perspective or what have you. And then I refuse their help. I don't want them to fix my problem. I say that I want to do it myself, but then I will self-sabotage myself into not doing anything at all about said problem. And man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was completely unconscious of this cycle that I was in of just like complaining, receiving help from somebody who then gave me, fantastic practical help to be able to, get past a particular situation that I found myself in. And then I say no. And then I don't even do the thing that I am so determined to be independent about, because on some level, I believe even still that I'm not capable of doing that thing, even though I so desire to. And so I just find myself, caught on this merry-go-round of self-sabotage. And I'm sure on some levels, people in my life in the past have seen this and have probably walked away from me. And I probably have, not made money and missed out on some fantastic collaborations and opportunities because I can be just so massively stubborn and self-sabotaging at the same time too. And so, in trying to work with this and bring awareness to it, how can I transmute these situations with the divine awareness? And so self-sabotage seems to be one of my just big things right now. And self-sabotage is cutting myself off from my own greatness, right? It's thinking that the right now is more important than the future, or the future is more important than the right now, when in all actuality, there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place to be able to binge watch Netflix, and there is a time and place to not binge watch Netflix. And so trying to navigate that is super difficult. I even found myself doing it last night, where I had written all of these notes and I had kind of given myself this awesome pep talk, and still found myself doing self-sabotage, committing this against myself, even after I knew that it was a simple awareness of going, hey, I'm self-sabotaging right now, but I still wanted to do it. And unfortunately, I did, but I can see that now and can look back on it and go, okay, yeah, I blew it. That's okay. I still love that girl. I forgive that girl. And I get back up and I try again. And so self-sabotage often for me needs to be combated with, it's my stubbornness. It has to be combated with the respect and self-love for my sleep or my exercise or my health, and being able to go, hey, Rebecca, your inner peace is worth more than this moment. Put the phone away, put the book down, close the refrigerator, whatever it is, and get in touch with your divine space for a moment and see what's the best choice here. And it's not perfect. It's not easy, but it's a process. And it's just about continuing to get back up. Fall 7 times, get up 8, that Chinese proverb. Just continuing to try, failing forward, as I like to say also. And one of the other things that I have found for myself that I do is that if I'm in a place where I am just picking apart my partner, or another person, or, another driver, or what have you, I am oftentimes trying to offload shame and guilt over the exact same thing that I'm trying to point out in somebody else. And it takes a massive amount of courage and honesty to look at myself and just be able to say, hey, it's okay. You do the same thing. Let it go. Work on yourself. Their path is not yours to walk. And so I hope that I've given you a little bit of levity, of some lightness, that shadow work is really just about becoming aware of the things that we do and why we do them. And then hopefully getting in touch with our divine space and living from that place, as opposed to the ego. It's not easy. It's not perfect. but we're all in this together. So that's all I really have to say about that. And I'm sure we'll return to this topic sometime in the future. But I'm just so excited that we got to spend this time together. I am so honored, genuinely touched that you would spend time with me, that you would take time out of your day to listen to what I'd have to say. I'd really love to hear from you and would love to know what you think about this episode. Please message me or leave a comment if this is on YouTube, which it should be at some point. And give me your thoughts. I'd love to know what's going on with you. And I'd love to hear your perspective also. Maybe something that you're able to share with me brings light to my path so that I can grow, because we are in this together. I don't have it all the way figured out. And I'd love to hear how you deal with your shadow, how you integrate and come back to your divine space. If you are interested in sending me an email or my services or any of that good stuff, please visit my website at www.divinejourneyofself.com. That's all one word, divinejourneyofself.com. And you can book a one-on-one Akashic Records reading with me from my website. I believe it's in the top right-hand corner. It says book online. I'd absolutely love to get to know you and to help you on your personal divine journey of self. And remember, you are loved. Just flow with it. Everything is going to be all right.